What else do you get?
We got all the favorites: pancakes, bacon. Well, it's not sausage. Kielbasa.
Yeah, once and some of the sausage from Alabama.
Yeah, it's
Alabama sausage. I don't know if I got
Sausage on a separate plate right here. So you got a second.
What county?
I think it's called Connecticut County.
Thanks. May I have more?
Best sausage I've ever had.
Yeah, it's excellent.
Well, sure.
More some pepper, my eggs. Yeah. Where's the cheese eggs?
Just a little bit.
Well, you got the cheese eggs.
Yeah.
Stronger, but that's
Okay, because I don't taste the cheese.
Oh, it's on there. I see it. All right, I might put.
I've had
Taste it now. Put a little.
I
I might put a little too much salt on it. It came out kind of bad.
Did for a living.
Go ahead and taste it now, brother.
Thank you, brother.
Oh yeah.
This is like that. It's very good.
Reindeer sausage. This is like that's
I've
deer
had-
sausage I've never
I've been to
Oh,
Montreal.
you're welcome.
And in Montreal, they have all the different
I'm going out of town later this afternoon.
Where you going?
Well, I'm not. She's going. She's going to. She's going to Boston for some work stuff. Coincidentally, I'm going to Boston on Wednesday.
Maybe sometime in the future.
For some
I wanna
church
see
stuff.
how
What kind of stuff you do? You preaching?
But I never really shot a gun except for like BB
The
guns.
congregation that we used to go to when we
No, I
lived in
haven't
Boston
hunted before.
for
Shot with one?
like 4 years or something like that.
Used to have like two
Congregation we
targets in the
went to up there
backyard.
asked me to come back and be a speaker at the men's thing.
What's the name of the church?
Roxbury Church of Christ.
It's going to be online?
No, it won't be. We're gonna be out in the country of New Hampshire, the woods of New Hampshire. Yeah. So it's gonna be pretty rugged and rough.
My company has a... Could you record video in there of your service?
I could probably record myself and share that recording. You hear about the company?
The company me and my wife work for, one of their main offices in Watertown,
Watertown, New Hampshire, or Massachusetts?
Massachusetts. Fred, I didn't know that you're still working for the county? No, I left law enforcement 7.5 years ago. You still carrying a hog leg though, right? Who's that? Yeah. I carry everything. Yeah. I was like,
So I was drinking this juice.
I know I see what I see.
Brother Barry.
Oh, yeah.
Brother Barry.
Brother who? Ever since law enforcement. Barry? Fred Barry, yeah.
Yeah, Brother Barry.
Fred Barry. Ever since I left law enforcement, it was like not a question on whether or not I'm carrying. So you used to be a policeman? Yeah, well, deputy sheriff. I used to work in jail. So you're the guy I met earlier today, right? Yeah. Okay. Because I was wondering, when I get to meet somebody that was part of law enforcement that used to... It's been a while. Goes here. I did 2 years and 6 months.
Mr. Chester, my dad is in law enforcement. He's a probation officer.
What now?
My dad is a probation officer in law enforcement.
He goes here?
Yes. Jay.
Who?
Jay. Over there.
Jay?
Yes, 2 years. Oh, wait. He's on all the way on
Brother Jalen.
He's all the way on your right. There's a table to your right. He's sitting with my little brother, a couple other brothers.
He led songs. I want to say maybe like 2 weeks ago.
Or Jackson?
Yes.
Jaylee Jackson.
He met us the other Sunday, and we were all sitting at the same table. It was on Sunday evening, I believe. We were all sitting at a table. We were eating Zaxby's, and you were sitting across the table from us.
Yeah.
Did Zaxby's open up the dining room yet? That might have been long.
They have. The one near the church.
Oh,
One near the church building is, I think. I don't remember where exactly you're going.
Chester, what's happening, my friend?
Just having a blessed day. Who's this?
Brian.
Brian, brother Brian. Great, brother.
Yes, sir.
I don't know. I think
What'd you get?
Hello, cheese.
I know in Alaska,
Cheese, not cheese.
McDonald's
Eggs.
wouldn't open there.
Eat around the cheese.
So like maybe early in the morning.
So you don't eat cheese on your eggs?
11 o'clock. But during the
No, I don't
day,
eat cheese
they
at
have a
all.
really long drive-through. Long
It's
drive
good
by.
though.
We used to go there,
What's the word?
I don't eat
but
dairy.
we stopped going because it'd be too long of a line. And if we had no time to go,
Lactose
most of the
intolerant.
time we didn't go because it's too long of a line. What time? Like an hour because of how long the line was.
Can't do it.
So the guy, how you doing, bro?
Pretty good.
Walter.
Hey,
To my
Chief.
closet.
Yeah, you know, they say the best of minds stick alike, you know.
Hey, brother Walter.
Hey, how you doing, bro?
Doing great, brother. What about you?
I'm doing fine, just a little late. Pardon my late.
Great to see you, brother.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
How you doing, Walter?
Who, Mr. Holt.
Oh, Walter.
For everyone who did this, thank y'all. I know Keith is here. Thank y'all.
Big swing.
Kids who?
Keith Dominique.
He headed all this.
No, he had a big hand in
on
it.
Friday. And then we cooked it earlier in the morning. We cooked some of the flat sausages first, and then we cooked the wing sauce and stuff like bacon last.
Yeah, I met him last week for the first time.
Who, Keith?
Yep.
Really? That nice guy.
Yeah, he is.
How was school this week?
Oh, I'm homeschooled. But
It's still
it's pretty
school.
good.
Is it just you?
No, it's me and my little brother. My sisters, they're adults, obviously, so they aren't going to school. But I was doing a pre-algebra test yesterday. I don't know if I aced it yet or not, but I don't really like it that much.
I think you aced it.
I don't think I did.
Well,
I was
No,
doing
nobody
expressions.
says if you said it the wrong way. Then if you didn't think you aced it,
I don't. Well, the way the website I'm using works, like you do the test and then it emails you, like a couple days after.
okay.
But I don't really like doing expressions that much. I'm not really that good at them, so I've been trying to work out a lot more. But I'm hoping I got at least past 70 or something.
Probably got about a 98.
I know, right?
let me ask you a question. So since you're homeschooled, is there homework or is it just work?
Right.
I just got some work to do, y'all.
Technically, it's all homework. If you think about it, doing it at home is work.
So what would you be considered right now in terms of matriculation?
I don't know why I got so much candy in my mouth. I knew someone was asking me a question like, I probably shouldn't put this in my mouth.
Oh, good. Do you do 40 times? 40 chews before you swallow?
64.
64?
Because technically you chew for 32 seconds, you chew twice every second, so 64 chews is 32 seconds. I read that if you chew for 32 seconds, it's probably, you should chew for 32 seconds, then you swallow, and I figure if you chew 2 times a second, 64 seconds is how many chews you need to do before you swallow. So I don't have to count every single second, I just chew 64 times.
Makes sense.
What are you guys about before?
I was saying, so where are you in terms of your studies right now? Like, what would you be considered from a grade standpoint?
Oh, I'm ninth grade right now. I think my best subjects are probably history and history, social studies, and math. I used to have a Spanish workbook, but the workbook is like, it was last revised in 1996, so obviously I need to get a new one because Spanish changes a lot. I think I'm pretty good so far.
I'll get it here.
Every class except for math, like algebra, is the main part that I'm getting probably going to be on for a good
What else?
but
I was just saying, you got a new buddy here at the table with you.
Who's the math whiz in your
Yes, you get the Spanish.
Jacob,
How you doing?
Jacob is?
how good are you at math? Thumbs up or
Nice to
thumbs
meet you.
down?
Cole,
He's pretty good at math.
Cole Jones?
Yes.
Great.
So Jacob would be what level then?
He's in 8th grade right now.
We finished. You need to get your plate.
May I have some more, please?
pancake. What do you need?
More pancakes, regular pancakes, please.
Regular pancake.
And cheese eggs. And sausage patties. Please don't cut them up.
Where you putting all that food, Chess?
In my stomach.
You got two stomachs? How was your week?
It's been great. What's with yours?
Anyone worth it? I had coffee the other day. My sister was
Getting any good recordings in this week?
Dunkin' Donuts. So
I have been.
She used to be a barista before I moved down here, and my sister.
If there was one,
No more eggs left.
They
No more
had, like,
eggs.
Oh
But I
man.
got the pancakes and sausage.
Could you cut up pancakes for me, please?
a lot of exotic coffee. I had some ones come me up all day. It tasted so good, though. I
The
had
real
black.
stuff. The real stuff.
It tasted like real coffee. You know, like you get coffee from.
So we didn't get enough eggs
It just
this
tastes
time.
black. That's what it tastes
I might have
like.
got too much.
But it's black. And then I had some that coffee. It tasted fruity. It was straight from the bean. It was good.
Did you have syrup?
Yes, please. Regular syrup, please.
There's some Ethiopian restaurants around that serve that kind of coffee.
Real coffee.
Yeah, because that's where the coffee beans originated in Ethiopia.
So what's the difference between, is it brewed differently?
Well, y'all had skins, so did y'all used to have plenty? Did y'all have plenty of eggs then?
On a push.
He want to know who the
Did
master
y'all
was
run
in
the
the
eggs
house.
first?
Heavily
Oh, it's
caffeinated.
been like 3 years. I
Wait,
mean, I think we had pretty much everything.
Shepherds, they were herding
We're
goats.
just getting back into the flow,
See their goats.
and we'll be able to monitor what's needed next time. And
Goats would just be wired, and that's how they
How
observed.
would
That's
you
how
do
it was first observed.
well,
How people do this?
And then after that,
maybe every other
people
month
started
we're trying to get that
harvesting
back
it
in.
as
It used to be once a quarter, but we're trying to go
drying it,
a little bit more
and then,
so that
which
we can
intensifies
keep our Bible studies going up.
the caffeine.
Right.
Okay, let me bring
Kind of
it.
like raisins. Because there's a coffee fruit and there's coffee beans. But,
You say plenty of syrup.
Yes,
I only
please.
know about this because I actually.
Thank you, brother.
It's all right. Let's go ahead and educate us.
I'm with it. I used to.
So,
Okay.
like you were
There we
saying,
go.
they found out. That
Thank you, brother.
But there's coffee.
Can I have some more
I don't know if the coffee fruit is edible or not.
milk, please? This type of cup instead of the
Same color as they are.
paper cup?
So you roast them. They're green. Like, they're green. They're like green grapes. You can see them just a little bit smaller. That's about all I know.
Thank you.
Either I'm back to study or I don't have a ride line to get there in time.
So like what made them brew the things?
Yeah.
And I always think about like what made you do this act?
You take the next step. I mean, you know, I don't know the answer. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you.
Also, they went what would happen, maybe. Like, ways to make it intensify. I don't know. That's what I know. I know it's chocolate. They would roast them first, or when you sweet, them just cookie powder.
Right. That's right.
And it was a blueberry muffin. Josh, did you get anything to eat? Josh, did you eat?
You getting your
I don't know. Pancakes are good. The strawberry pancakes. I think Brent made those.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't need it. I don't think they didn't need eggs. They just put water in them. They already have powdered eggs in them already, so it's pretty good.
Talking about the pancakes?
You gonna be able to eat all your eggs, Brian?
They're almost gone, sir.
Like frozen fruit or something?
Great.
No, it's fresh. It's in the refrigerator. But
It was fresh
Trying not to
strawberry?
waste no food, you know.
Oh, yeah. Great.
And most people don't know.
He's got a skill that he's been hiding from us.
That's right.
Who's that?
Brent over there with the, he's got his back to us in the blue. He's the one who made the pancakes, the strawberry pancakes.
Who did?
Yeah, Brent.
He's over to your left.
You know Brent?
A little bit.
Yeah.
I must have missed those.
There's something over there, I think.
Yeah.
Are you the Jackson that's on the Tuesday online class?
I don't think I was in class last Tuesday. My dad was. I know some birds down in Tennessee, or not now, but I'm in class. I know some birds in Tennessee, Alabama. We do like a weekly Tuesday night Bible study, so I was in that on Tuesday. So I wasn't there in class.
But you've been in that class before, right?
I hope we're going to have it live again. I can't wait till we have it live again, the Bible class.
It's live.
I'm talking about all of us together in one room. Not online, but live. In person.
On Wednesday nights?
Oh no, the Tuesday night.
The Georgia School preaching classes in person.
Gotcha.
Oh, the strawberries are gone. Strawberry pancakes.
I didn't see those.
Yeah, no, you didn't.
What about the blueberry pancakes?
The blueberries were on the bottom. There are a couple of blueberry pancakes there. Strawberries were on the
I don't really like strawberries that much. I mean, I'll eat them sometimes, but they aren't really that sweet. I'm not really looking for sweetness in it per se. It's just, I mean, I don't really like it. I like kiwi fruit a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Fresh lemons are pretty good.
Is that back when luck was like by itself?
Well, no.
So that was back.
I mean, just sprinkle the sugar on them. Practically lemonade. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Can you hear me? We're gonna have a devotional time and give everybody a chance to try to eat up. And you can still continue eating, but I know we want to try to move things along. So got a little preparation here. So again, appreciate everybody coming out. Those who remember, it's been 3 years.
Yeah.
We're back to getting this going again.
That's right. Thank you guys. Big hand to the people who've done that. That's right.
Who cooked what?
I don't know. Brothers just chipped in. Was it good?
Really great. What all is left? What's left?
There's just some like sausage, and I think there's like a little bit of flat sausage left, and eggs.
Almost like a
grits
different
and eggs are still left, and there's
Really?
pancakes left.
Almost.
I don't know.
Who's that?
I know normally that's Leonard.
Hey, Chester.
The third.
Hey, how you doing, brother?
You know Leonard the third?
Yeah.
We got well acquainted last week, I think.
Oh yeah.
Last week or week before last week.
Yep. Hey, brother Leonard.
Hey, how you doing?
What's
Chester?
left?
Good job on the
Doing great, blessed.
What's left?
Yes. What they have left?
Let's see. It looked like some bacon. Looks like a little bit of gravy. Looks like sausage.
Have you not eaten anything yet?
Maybe some fruit left too. Maybe.
Oh, it's fruit salad.
Yeah.
Actually, dressing.
You need a little extra Chester?
Yes. What they have? What they said they have left?
I'm good.
Is it your plate?
That's my plate.
But you still want to go back.
You gonna take it?
Might I have all that, please?
Yeah, sure.
And please don't cut the sausages. But please cut the pancakes.
You want the patty, sausage patty, or sausage link?
Both, please. And may I have some more juice in this type cup, and also more milk in this type cup, please?
Okay. So you want
Thanks.
juice or you want milk?
Both.
Okay.
Juice and milk, please.
Hey, where's Ethan? He had to work.
Well, it looks like you're doing well.
Chester,
What now?
where's Ethan?
Philip.
Philip. Yes.
He had to work today.
He had to work. He's at work.
He's at work.
Juice.
Thanks. Could you wet this some more, please?
Do what?
Could you wet this some more, please?
Yeah.
Thanks, brother.
Here's your orange juice. We're replacing your orange juice right there.
Thank you, brother.
You got your milk there right there.
It's right in front of you.
Yep.
Yeah. That's it.
Let's fill it to the top.
No.
What else did you want? What else?
About three quarters.
Pancakes, bacon, sausage. Are you good?
Pancakes, cheese, eggs, and sausage. Here's my plate.
They may not have any cheese eggs. They have pancakes.
I mean, pancakes and the sausages, both sausages.
Yep.
Please.
You said cut the pancakes?
Yes, please, but don't cut the sausage. Please, thanks.
Most people didn't see me on camera. You go to baseball? Baseball was I knew how to.
Gentlemen, we're getting ready to get started here. You got your Bibles.
Yeah, they didn't want to get a Bible of some sort. There's gonna be a lot of reading. I'm gonna ask some of you guys to read. What I wanted to start out looking at right now is from Proverbs 6, 16 through 19. And kind of the lesson that we're going to look at is, are you guilty of any of the 7 things God hates? So let's look at Proverbs 16 through 19. Jay, would you take that for us? Proverbs 6, 16 through 19.
Proverbs 6, 16 through 19 read, how much better to get wisdom
You got your
gold?
Got your sausage right here, and then to the right I have your cut up
The highway of upright
pancakes. Okay.
I have some circle, please.
It's got
Proverbs 6,
Thanks.
16 through 19.
That's good read. That's good read.
These 6 things the Lord hates. Yes, 7 are an abomination to him. Proud look, lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that are swift and run into evil, false witness who speaks lies, and one who sows discord among brothers.
One thing that we have to remember as Christians, we're going to have to hate what God hates. Now, that's going to bring you in conflict with the world, bring you in conflict with those in your family, but it won't bring you in conflict with God. If God hates it, you're going to have to hate it too. It may be uncomfortable, may not feel good. We may even want to argue with God. Why do we need to hate it? There's good people behind this. But if God hates it, we have to as well. Calls us to examine our hearts. When we look at this scripture,
What do you say, Chester?
we learn a little bit more about God, what He hates. And this gives us a glimpse behind the door, a picture of this is who God is. This is who I need to be. If I want to live righteously on this earth, if I want to call myself a Christian, and this goes for me, I was convicted by this lesson many times when I looked over it. Proverbs 6 is not an exhaustive book. It's not everything. You can't walk away and say, well, there's only, 6, 7 things God hates, and that's it. No, this gives us a glimpse. So we're gonna look at this, and please, if you have any questions, raise your hand. But you know me, those who've been around, it's interactive. I want your questions, no comments on this. But the first thing,
What do you need?
you want to look at what is hated and detestable to God. Haughty eyes. Now, we may not think about it. We don't use that word in our common everyday vernacular. What is haughty? What does that mean? It denotes an arrogance, a spirit of superiority. And we see that, we can usually see that in the world. And one thing I want us to examine here, a lot of things we read may not be so evident. What I'm saying is we may be doing them and not realizing. So I want to look at this today. I want us to, if we're convicted, so we can make amends and get back on track. It's not to denigrate or put anyone down if you find yourself following this track along the way, but haughty eyes. Are you arrogant? Most of us say we know, but are you arrogant when you're talking to someone about the Church of Christ? Do you think you're superior than anyone?
That's Jack Peters.
What say you? Speaking. You ever been talking to some youth? Or have you ever felt that, hey, I'm in the church. I'm not like these sinners over here. Think about that. Sometimes that gets put on us. And we are arrogant. You do think you're superior. And the truth is, we're to take the truth. That doesn't mean feel bad because we're in the church, but it also means it's a balancing act. We have to weigh, okay, am I acting for those who are not? You see that more so with those in the world than we do among ourselves as brethren, but that can happen. You can have a good job, you can have or by children that you love. Somebody may not have any. You can feel somewhat superior that, hey, I made it. I'm doing what God wants me to do. Why aren't you? That type of attitude. And we have to be very careful about that.
So we are set apart.
We are set apart. That's true.
That's Jeff.
But again, it's a balancing act.
That's Jeff.
How we
Jeff.
how we want to act and take what we have here and use it to God's glory and not to put a man down, because we're to lift everyone up. As we have the truth, we're helping.
Jeff Ferguson, Deacon.
It's all about making sure we're not setting ourselves over another, and even how we judge one another. There are certain things that idiosyncrasies, pet peeves, things like that we have, and we let that come in conflict with how we treat someone. David, yes.
Jack, that was a good word choice when you said not over. So further to Jeff's credit, we are set apart, but we're not set over.
Yeah.
David Fleming.
And that can come out if we don't watch what we're doing. It's that also self-righteous attitude. It can creep in, and that's what I want to look at. These things can creep in. Don't think that, hey, I'm immune. Sometimes it comes through with how we say things and how we act towards someone. We may not recognize it, and we would hope, whether it's me, let's open our heart when a brother or sister tells us something, because they're only doing it out of love. It should be anyway. Walter, you had a question or comment?
Yes, sir. The Lord told us, well, by extension of the instruction to the apostles, that do not rule the way the lords of the Gentiles rule, where they lord over folks, right? And so the Lord spends a lot of time, in fact, it's central to our faith. When we think about the lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, and the pride of life, 1 John 2:16, right? And so that pride is insidious. Even in the garden, when we read those same 3 levels of sinful pathways. That third one is easily overlooked because it said about Eve, able to make one wise. Oh, that's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. Well, the purpose of that wisdom was almost like the folks were building on the Tower of Babel. They wanted to set themselves above and apart from God. And so it's a real insidious thing for me, for us, I believe, that we could fall into that false piety, not even realizing we're being haughty. Similar to the Pharisee in Luke 18, who talked about all the great things as he prayed to himself, not even to God, all the great things that he's doing in the name and for God. You know,
all the things he was.
Yes, yes. And so I think it's important that we examine ourselves. You know, check ourselves. For me, Walter, I need to check myself.
Well, I want to say this, and of course I'm not going to mention names, it affects quite a bit of it. But you know, we have to be careful when we go around and say, well, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't, or my daughter or what have you, wouldn't get, pregnant out of wedlock, or go drinking or go smoking dope. We've got members here who just came out of that, or had come out of that. We got to be careful about it. Now, that's not to say, hey, you can go do these things, it's all right. But remember, most of us came out of things like that. Now, there's quite a few who grown up in the church. That's great. We're learning from that. We appreciate that. We're gleaning much from that. But there's quite a lot of us that didn't. And if you're going around making sure oh, I wouldn't do that. That's wrong. I just wouldn't do that. Yeah, you wouldn't because you were raised that way. But not everyone was. Some people have had a hard journey to get here. And we have to be sympathetic to that. It's not to say we're justifying it, but just being more sympathetic that their journey was a harder one to get here. Yes,
Chester's requested that whoever speaks, if you could say your name, he's, I guess, trying to get to know us and doesn't know.
Jack Peters and everyone else.
That help Chester.
Thanks.
No problem, Chester. No problem at all.
That's Ray. Ray Strickland.
One of the points that came up when we were studying prayer was that there was a tendency, to some that, we get into this Pharisee versus the Republican type deal that when you sometimes pray, you expect God to answer our prayer because you're a Christian. Same thing as the Pharisee was praying that he was selfish God and to prayer because all the stuff that he had done that brought attention to himself. And that's our character and attitude. That creeps in among us from time to time. We need to be very careful about it. God does not force and sometimes we pray to God with this expectation that since we're a good Christian, He owes that to us. That's not how it goes. That's one of the things that should come out from that study about prayer.
This is Jay Jackson. In your comment about those who didn't grow up in the midst of the church and those who did, I think that an arrogant attitude, as you talking about, you can have as one who grew up in the midst of the church, is that, oh, I didn't have to go through that. And yet, we those of us that have grown up in the midst of the church, that's what makes us sometimes fall quickly. Because I ain't have to deal with that, so I don't have to get into one time for it. But that's why we have to stick to what Scripture says and practice those things that we've seen throughout Scripture to help continue to build upon our foundation. Because if we do have that attitude, we fall away. All of us can fall away. But I think to your point, the appreciation for those that came out of the world and saw the light. We could look at the world and say, I think I want to do that and fall away from Christ.
John Budd. Chester, that's me, John Budd. I really want to pick up on what Mr. J said. He said, I didn't grow up in the church. And all I gotta say is, I know a lot of people that grew up in the church that are not going to heaven. Because they thought, like you said, they thought that they've got it. And the problem is that that's arrogance. That is arrogance. Thinking that I grew up in the church. That's arrogance itself. When I say, oh, I grew up in the church. What do you mean you grew up in the church? You were raised in the church? You had all the advantage of learning in the church? Yeah, what does that mean? What does that mean in the long run? It means really nothing, because the servant that came at the last hour got paid the same that came at the beginning. So I guess the servant that came at, the complaint was, well, I was here first. I grew up in the church. That to me is what I consider arrogance. Is someone that walks around saying, I grew up in the church. And does that make you better than somebody else?
And sometimes,
So when you define yourself in your belief as I grew up in the church, I take that as being arrogant. Because it doesn't matter. God blesses you, God blesses you, it doesn't matter who and when you came to salvation. And you can say, well, I learned more. You know, there's a lot of people that grew up in the church that are still drinking milk.
and they think they're on me.
They probably think something, yeah.
Second one I have talks about a lying tongue. Let's talk about aggressively intends to deceive. Satan is the father of lies. Can someone get John 8:44? John 8:44. John 8:44.
You are of David Mosley. You are of your father the devil, and the desire of your father you want to do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own resources, for he is a liar and the father of it.
And also out of the abundance of the heart, our mouth speaks. And someone look at Luke 6:45. Luke 6:45.
Jeff Ferguson. The good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth good, and the evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart brings forth evil. For out of the abundance of the heart his mouth speaks.
How do you recognize a lying tongue? Not telling the truth about a wrongdoing, blaming others for our own sins, making excuses, withholding needed information, telling white lies. Is there ever any time when a lie should be told? Well, let's think about that for a minute. He says no. I mean, is he telling the truth?
Well, if God hates lying tongue, I guess.
Well, what about what about if you don't want to hurt someone's feelings? Does that count?
Say what?
What about if you don't want to hurt someone's feelings? Can you just
Did God put an exception on what he hates? I hate this except if it's going to hurt someone's feelings. Of course not.
Because then you start justifying that, when does it stop? When do you start making it? Yes.
Oh, this is Corey Branson. So, a couple examples stick out to me. When Abraham left out Sarah and almost lost a man's life or some degree. And then also when David lied about Saul sending him, and he ended up getting some people killed because of it, because they helped him, thinking that Saul sent them. And when you look at examples of lying in the Bible, usually, even though it doesn't have this imposing presence of God necessarily like coming down on people in a moment, there's consequences to those lies. However it pans out. And even with like things like white lies or something like that, there's no white lie, it's a lie. But that diminishes people's character and what they think of individuals, because eventually the truth comes out, at some point, or you created a false sense of truth that is just as bad.
Let me interject something. Everybody, all those married men around you, your wife asks you, I've been around,
Sweet nothings.
does this make me look bad? Okay, there's no other women.
Why would she ask that question?
It's a test, brother.
Yeah, I know.
I'm
sure knows the answer. She already knows the answer.
I mean, if you've been married for a while, about to get married, what would you say?
No.
No, it's not the dress.
Define.
Yeah, you're smart.
Arjane asked me that. I said, I told her, I said, well, yeah, you probably need something different. I said, okay, thanks.
That's the right answer.
What was that again?
That's the right answer.
If Arjane asked me, does this dress make me look fat? I could make a joke and say, oh, no. Just go look in the mirror. No. I would say,
You're smarter than that.
You have to. Get better.
I would say, I would tell her, and because she wanted to know, she wanted to go outside carrying property, or is this too short, or whatever. I'd tell her the truth. But I've been married 44 years, so nothing really bad could happen to me. It hasn't happened already.
I want to agree with him.
Who is that?
This is Leonard Morrow. I want to agree with Brent, and it's a function of the maturity of your relationship. She knows the difference between asking me a question that she genuinely wants the answer to, and asking me a question that she, that is rhetorical, that she has a built-in answer that she wants me to feed her. She knows the difference between those two things, and so do I. And I know when she's asking one, and I know when she's asking the other. And it's up to me to be honest and say, if you're asking me, does this look appropriate, then I'll give that answer. But if you're asking me, do I look great in this garment that I was wearing when we first met 37 years ago, then I have to give the honest answer on that also. That's my only.
I was going to say something similar to what Leonard just said, but it's like your wife has to, it depends on the character of your wife. Now, I know sometimes we don't want to talk about the character of our wives, but do they want to know the truth or not? What is the truth? Is your wife the truthful person? If she's asking, she wants a truthful answer, then you give her the truthful answer. It's just no other way. I mean, no matter what you put on, sometimes it's not gonna hide what's there.
My wife is very truthful with me. She said, "Are you gonna wear that shirt with those pants?" Why? Because so. Oh, okay. Similar. It's similar. She's going to ask me that question, and
she didn't see you leave the house this morning.
She's much better at matching stuff than I am, so I'm going to believe me. She's proactive.
Great, and then
I don't agree with that. I think a lot of times it's question reality versus rhetorical. And Denise and I have been around long enough to know that. And so, sometimes you ask that question, I want to try something else. And, it's that simple with us. And other times it might be, I won't say a lot. She pick it up.
That's right. That's right.
This is David. As far as, I think to the young guys that haven't been married yet or started a relationship or just beginning a relationship, if you start telling the truth in the beginning, then by the time you get 24 years or 44 years under your belt, and you and your wife can have these conversations with, no friction. But in the beginning, if you start out telling these, you know, allowing her to wear things that you didn't agree with, especially when she asked, you know, then later on they kind of want you to say, they actually want you to say it's okay every time, and then you gotta kind of try to keep that up, and then you run into problems. But I think the truth is the best course. But what I know, like with my wife, she has no problem telling me it's time for a haircut. So why can't I tell her that? You know?
Because in the beginning, God made man one way and woman a different way. He made us different. But that's why we, this Jacob Jackson speaking, we have to make sure that as men, especially us that are married, we adhere to what Scripture says about, you notice how it tells us to love our wives, but what does it tell the woman to do? Right. And so we have to learn how to love them, and we have to learn how not to be bitter with them. Because of what you just said, we can grow bitter. Like, why can't I just do this, but you have to ask? Everything everybody said, our wives will tell us straight up, no, you don't need to be wearing it, you need a haircut, this and that. They ask us because they respect our opinion, they respect what we're saying. And what that brother just said about, if we don't start out in the beginning doing that, and later on, when our wives, just like us, fill out just a little bit more, they still want to wear those clothes they used to, and you know it's not appropriate, how are you going to tell them then? I mean, you need to, but how are you going to have that conversation then?
And I'm going to tell you, whether it's a spouse or not, when you starting out with the white lie, it doesn't get any better until you stop, repent, tell the person, you know, the truth, because white lies kind of build on themselves, and before you know it, you're not telling the truth at all. Because, you know, most people are not going to lie to be mean and ugly. Now, some do, but most of the time, you think about it, especially with Christian, you don't want to hurt someone. You put it under that headline. I didn't want to hurt them, so I deceive them a little bit, but it was for their own good, right? That's what we tell ourselves. But it has a way of backfiring. Okay, I have who else had their hand up? Yes.
I don't remember exactly where it is in Proverbs. I believe it's in, it's Jaden Jackson talking right now. I believe it's in chapter 21 of Proverbs. A good name is better than choice riches. You want to have a good name so that you don't deceive other people, so that they know that you won't deceive them. And I also was looking at James chapter 1 verse 19 and 20. It says, "So then, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. For the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God." And in order to not lie as much or not do something that we know probably might hurt someone, we should be slow to hear, and say slow to speak, and quick to hear, so that we know what to say, what not to say.
And like you said, it's all about, when we look at all of these, we put them together, it's that reputation that we're creating. Yes, John, and then
this is John again. I look at it as the lying is one thing, but the lying heart is the other thing. Is that I don't have to lie to have a lying heart. I don't have to tell lies, but I can have this heart that wants to deceive, that wants to do something evil, that wants to do that. That's why when David said, you start off telling the truth, if you are a child of God, you want to tell the truth. It doesn't matter whether it's to your wife or to someone else. You don't want to deceive, you don't want to tell any kind of lie. So where your heart is going to determine what comes out of your mouth. Like Mr. Jackson says, is that you've got to start there. God, I would imagine God hates lying. This is an imagination, I don't know, because it's an indication of what's inside.
And it doesn't always operate alone. There's other things that come with it.
People don't lie because they're truthful people.
Yep. David Mosley and John.
No, I just thought it was interesting. I remember having a conversation, and we were talking about.
Could you speak up a little bit?
I said, I just thought this was interesting. I was having a conversation, and we were saying our sweet nothing lives, and it depends on what you say. Depends on what you say, and those are, I guess, they are in themselves small lies, white lies.
At the end of the day, it's a lie. I'm gonna take John too. I want to move on. You had a question, John?
Proverbs 25:11 says, "A word spoken at the right time is like gold apples in silver settings." Colossians 4:6 says, "Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt." You don't have to lie, but the way that you say things is oftentimes more important than what you say.
Chester.
You know, if there's more than one person with the same name, could you mention the last names too?
Oh, okay. If you have a same first name, you say your last name as well. We're gonna move it. Number 3 talks about hands that shed innocent blood. Now we're not gonna get deep into this, but it talks about a murderer's heart, and that means not really caring for something that you got yourself so worked up that you have a lot of hatred toward another person. And that's
Innocent person.
pardon?
Yeah, innocent person. Yeah, person who hasn't done anything wrong to you.
You know, let me ask you something. Have you ever worked up, road rage, or even have these thoughts that you find yourself getting mad at someone? They really never did anything, but you think, well, if they do this and I'm going to do that, I'm going to say this. You work yourself into a frenzy. What for? It's like, why did I do that? They hadn't even done anything. And we have to be very careful with that because we have a tendency to attribute bad things to people. Now, we don't want that attributed to us, but we do have a tendency to do that. Yes,
and I think Leonard Morrow the third.
Leonard Morrow the third.
And I think there can be a circumstance in which, something unfavorable happens to you and you can be upset about it or with somebody, but that doesn't make them at fault. Like they can maintain their innocence while you're still in a situation that is unfavorable, and you have to, at that point, take a step back and realize your part within the situation, because time and chance happens to everyone, and you can feel like, man, I've been done wrong, but you have to accept the responsibility, and know where to direct those emotions.
It's the thought, it's the attitude of feeling sorry for yourself.
I'll be back.
What's the other word I want to use? We have to break away from feeling oppressed about everything. A lot of things happen to us because if we step back and if we're honest, the first thing we need to do in the morning is get up, look in the mirror, and examine who we are. Because sometimes we can feel oppressed, dejected, and it's our own fault. And we have to be very careful of that. Jason?
We gotta make sure what people do to us doesn't become a grievance. Grievance is a real or imagined wrong. We gotta make sure that what happened to us isn't an imagined wrong. I just don't like what they did to me, so I'm gonna be mad at them to the point where I'm gonna start sinning because I'm thinking about them and I'm thinking about things I could do to them. We gotta make sure we don't let what they do to us become an imagined wrong. If it's a real wrong, even still, we gotta make sure we deal with it in the right way so that we aren't attacking them, because we should be the light of the world instead of being a shadow or a basket to put over a light.
And also, along with that, Jay, we have to understand all of us, every last one of us has some baggage. We may not want to admit it, but we have some baggage. And we bring that baggage into every relationship we get in. And sometimes people are dealing with things and it may not come out the right way. And we're all upset and mad at them. And they're going through some serious struggles that we'll never even know about. Yes, John?
This is Charlie Minton. I think that this point is, it's close to my heart because we were looking at Cain. Why did Cain kill Abel? The sin is deceitful. Cain was supposed to do something for God. Abel was supposed to do something for God. Cain was supposed to do something for Abel. That relationship, they were parallel, not intersecting. And because of the deceitfulness of sin and some of the things that we're talking about now, something happens in your mind that kind of gets you a little weird. We read a book years ago by the Arbiter Institute. It was called, y'all remember what it was?
By who?
Arbiter Institute.
Little man?
No, it was it talked about this idea of how we start to transfer the disappointment that we get from not doing good into doing bad. Leadership and self-deception. And so just I think it's a really good thing to look into to see what happens in our minds and try to nip it, like you're talking about, quickly. Fix it, like God says, and get things right. Because if we don't, we might start lying to our lives.
Amen. Absolutely.
In addition to knowing that we should nip it, we need to think about how we're going to nip it. Because saying it needs to be nipped may not take me where I need to go to forgive this person for what they have done, for me to purge the hate from my heart. So I need to know that I need to do it, but then I need to spend some time thinking about what course I will take to bring that about. That's what the work would be.
Yes, Walter.
Yes, sir. Walter Jones. And to hinge on what Charlie Leonard just said, the good book, right, gives us two instances, Matthew 5 and Matthew 18. One, if you have something against someone, before we go to worship, let's go ahead and get together one-on-one with that person and nip it in the bud, right? And in Matthew 18, right, if you have offended someone, I may have it reversed, I'm sorry. Then you go to the person and you settle it there. So the onus is on you if you offended someone or if someone offends you to go to that person one-on-one, right?
Let me go with that thought real quick. How many of us make sure that we've made up with our spouse or our children on a Sunday morning when they're making us late to get here? Do we enter this building with this clean slate? Or is that a rainbow effect, halo, if you will, that we're still mad with them when we enter the building, we come to worship, and they made us late, or they didn't do something, they didn't clean up, or something happened before we got here? Have we always cleaned that up, made amends, repented before we get here? Do we take that seriously? Yes, Corey Branson.
Yes, this is Corey Branson. I'll answer your question first. That's on us as the head of that house. We need to put such preparation into our days as the head of the house, for everybody in that house, for our kids, for our wives, for ourselves, so that when we wake up in the morning, we're not struggling and fumbling. We leave a large enough room for error to accommodate things. Now, granted, things happen, but they don't have to happen most of the time. If you prepare and if you plan for it accordingly. We all gotta go to church on Sunday morning. That means our clothes should be ironed on Saturday night, not Sunday morning. Because if I'm tired and I sleep in Sunday morning, it's gonna push everything back. So that kind of thought. But what Walter said, I'll say all that to say that what you just mentioned is a preventable problem most of the time. But what Walter said resonates with me because really, the things on this list, you can't worship and honor God with those things in your heart. It's not an acceptable worship if I hate my brother, or if I have mean intentions towards somebody, and then I go up and take the Lord's Supper knowing that Jesus died for me and that other person. You know, I can't be lying to everybody else around me when I know I can't lie to God and still expect him to accept me. You know, these are all things that will keep us hindered and or us end our relationship with God based on our actions. So, I mean, this list is detrimental, but even the murderous heart thing, like, man, I really want to, you know, look, I'm not saying anybody in here is homicidal, but you can get angry enough and want to do something to somebody. You don't do it, but you can have that in your heart, you know, if we're not careful. And so then it just turns into, is that honoring God at the end of the day? And these are abominations. God doesn't like these things. You know, it clearly spells it out. So I think it's, you know, it goes deeper to the core of like us as Christians, the people that we're developing to be, the men that we're coming to be, that we want to show our children, our sons to be, our daughters to look for in a man. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Well, we're not God incarnate. We are made in the image of him. So we should be treating each other like so.
Josh?
Like Corey said, I haven't personally. Sorry, my name is Josh Jackson. Jones, Joshua Jones. Like Corey said, I haven't felt homicidal recently per se, but not in the last couple of days. But the truth is that we are called to a higher standard as under the New Testament covenant, because Matthew 5:21 says, "You have heard that it was said to our ancestors, do not murder. Whoever murder will be subject to judgment. But I tell you, everyone who is angry with his brother and sister will be subject to judgment. Whoever insults his brother or sister will be subject to court. Whoever says you fool will be subject to hellfire." In the same context of anger and violence and physicality, this is the standard that Christ holds us to.
I want to go ahead and try to run through. We got a few minutes. Chester, did you have a question?
What version was that?
I happen to be reading from the CSB, the Christian Standard Bible.
CSB.
You're saying what version or what verse?
What version?
Version.
CSB.
CSB.
I try to use a couple.
Number 4, let's go. It said, "A heart that devises wicked schemes." God hates people who plot or conspire evil against any person. And we've been studying, Charlie, this is for those that come to class, we've been studying about Noah. And why did God send the flood? What was man's? Evil continually. Man's heart was evil continually. So when we look at a wicked scheme, what happened with David and Bathsheba? Was that by accident? What did David do?
Planned murder.
Planned murder. He planned adultery and then planned murder. And if you follow that and remember all the things, and Uriah, I mean, he loved David. This man wouldn't do anything against the king. And all the while, David's heart was planning something against it. And as far as we know, Uriah never had a clue. Never had a clue he was going down that path.
Question.
Yes. Go ahead. Oh, yes, Vincent.
This is it. I just want to bring up Joseph and his brothers. That wasn't a wicked scheme, of course, how they did Joseph, but how they led to good in the end, though.
Yes.
You know.
And they had worked themselves up to, you look at that example, how they worked themselves up to hate their own brother. And, they were going to kill him. And then they said, well, we don't have to kill him. We can throw him down here. But it turned out for their good. And there's so many lessons in that. You see the forgiveness of David. I mean, he cried over his brothers. Now, I've been at odds with my brother, and I haven't cried over it, I tell you. But maybe I should. But, I've been at odds. But you see this, the love that he had. Yes, David?
Oh, this is Jane Jackson.
I'm sorry. David.
I'm sorry.
David Fleming.
But you said what did David do? At the end of the day, what he did, being God's anointed man as king, in the end, he was told that he gave cause for people to blaspheme God because of your standard, which is as Christians, we are holding to that same standard. And when people catch us doing wrong things, then we give cause for those people to blaspheme against God's name.
And it's hard for them not to because we open that door. It's Jacob.
We also gotta remember, I'm not saying that Joseph's brothers weren't wrong when they did. We also gotta remember it's not also entirely their fault, because it was Jacob's fault too for having such pride in Joseph and having his favoritism with Joseph that made his brothers hate him so much.
John.
Okay, you're gonna have to take this with a grain of salt. I guess that it was God's fault because it was God's plan, right? I look at it as I'm kidding. It's not God's fault. It was God's plan that these things happened this way. So man couldn't stop it. So his brothers couldn't kill him because God's plan could have been carried out if they killed him. You know, it's man did these things. God knew that man was going to do these things because man was man. But the whole thing is we can't, no matter what we do, no matter how evil, no matter how many good, no matter how, we can't stop God's plan, but we can try to abide by it and try to live by it. So, you know, we have a lot of leeway, and God gives us leeway. But he tells us that stay on my path. You know, the path is not so narrow that you can't walk on it. There's a little bit of leeway there, but the whole thing is that I look at these 7 things as they're, and you said it, you know, at the beginning, this is not the full list.
Absolutely.
God is just telling us that, you know, there's a lot of things that I'm not going to put up with, that I really don't want you to be doing. And, you know, so check yourself, you know, and look at all the examples of people that did it, look at all the examples of people that didn't do it. And when God says in the word that you know, this is a person after God's own heart, that doesn't mean that person is always after God's own heart, but in these aspects, the ones that he's bringing out, and he also brings out the ones that they didn't. So it's that we have to be careful to keep on God's path.
Leonard, you have to.
Yeah, I want to comment and say that God has a plan, but that we always have free moral agency. And the fact that we are exercising free moral agency doesn't mean that his plan won't be carried out. One doesn't have to have anything to do with the other. God has providential powers beyond what we can even think about to make his plan occur, so that we can all retain our free moral agency and his plans still succeed and still be unpacked and carried out in time. So I want to make a distinction between saying so-and-so had to lie, so-and-so had to sin, so-and-so had to do this or the other. To take that away from them and say they had to do it takes away their free moral agency.
I don't see the term free moral agency in the Bible anywhere. I'm sorry.
Well,
and I'm not arguing with you, but I didn't say that they had to do it. I say God knew what they were going to do.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought I heard you were saying that.
No, they didn't have. They knew God knew what they were going to do, and they couldn't change what God knew they were going to do.
Well, now you're saying they couldn't change it. That means that.
How could they change something God knew?
They're not changing anything. You're saying
right.
They didn't have any choice.
I didn't say they were changing it. I said they can't go against what God knows.
I said you said that they didn't have any choice.
They don't have any way of going against what God knows. If I have to correct it for vernacular or whatever
No, we're not
else.
talking about what God knows. You said they don't have any choice.
Okay,
not the
then
same
take
as
that
saying-
back, I misspoke.
Okay.
All right? If you're working on the words, and I'm not trying to get in your face, but if
We're
you're
all
working on the
using
words.
words. We're all using words.
I know, but if I misspoke, what I'm saying is that God's plan, He knew what His plan is. He knew what men were going to do.
Correct.
So if He knows what someone's going to do, then for them to do something different, He didn't know it.
Well, if he knows what they're going to do, that's a matter of fact.
Right.
But that doesn't.
But He knows before they do it.
Right. It's just like he knows everything that's going to happen between now and the end of time. That doesn't mean that we will not have had a choice.
Did Pharaoh have a choice when God hardened his heart?
It was God, what God said, and what God did to hurt his heart, not God doing it first.
But we want to good conversation. I mean, this is great. But let's move on because there's some other things we want to pull out here. 5 is feet that are quick to rush into evil. Psalm 34:14. A person having no resistance to sin. Some sins are not stumbled upon. They're not are tripped over. They're intentional. And that's where you have to examine yourself. Have I intentionally done this? You know, sometimes we want to put it under, I tripped into it, it was unintentional. But if we're telling ourselves the truth, we know that's not the case. Somewhere in the back of our mind, in the deep recesses of our mind, we planned on doing something. We may not have shared that with anyone else, but it's there, and God knows it's there. That's for all of us. I stand as one who's been down that road. So we have to be very careful. James 4:7 talks about us resisting the devil. Because there's going to be things that are going to come up that we have to be very fully aware of, that we can trip, we can fall away. When you get number 6, now, there's something in number 6 I want to bring out. Talk about a false witness that pours out lies. And we say in natural, well, we don't lie, we won't do this. But what is lying? Someone who gives false testimony, speaking when you don't know the whole story, spreading misinformation, taking sides when you've only heard one side. We have to be very careful with that. And I say that a lot of times someone's going to come to you, if you've been around long enough, and they're going to tell you their side. They're hurt, they're feeling bad, could be a husband and wife, could be two friends. They're going to tell you their side. And that's why I don't like, I try to back away, but it don't always happen like this. I take things with a grain of salt, as the phrase goes, when there's either a husband or wife or somebody says something, especially someone who's divorced. They're going to talk so evil about that other person. But you have to remember, you don't hear that other person's story. And you can't always just jump on this side because they're sitting right in front of you and accept what they just said. I'm not saying you sit there, hey, you lying. No, you can't do that. But you have to be careful. You have to be fair about it. Because I tell people, well, if the other person's not here, I can't really listen to what you're saying because it's only fair for them to be right in front of me because they have a different side. There's always more than one side to a story. Always. Someone told me this is someone from the world, and said, there's 3 sides to a story: the truth, a lie, and somewhere in between. Now, you can debate that. I'm just telling you what they said. But that part in between is what each person brings to the table. Not everyone is going to see a situation the same. I remember something happened. I was on a trip with my in-laws, and we were comparing pictures when we got back. And it hit me at that moment. They took pictures. We're at the same place, but they took different pictures because they took what they saw. And we had different pictures. We were all in the same area, on this trip. But what they reported and what they took pictures of was entirely different. It's like, that's how people look at the world.
So true.
Ethan?
This is Ethan Rogers. I think about all of these, there's this sense of not caring. People who don't care to see God's will done. Because they've already mentioned a lying tongue, but I don't think we're exactly giving it again. I think it's more someone who hears something and they don't care enough to see if it's true. And I think that can go for other things, like hands that shed innocent blood, or if you hear about something bad happening to someone and you just assume they deserve it, you don't care enough to look into the truth. So you gotta be active in everything you do. Like you've got to not just, it's not enough that we don't put forth the work. We're not doing good just because we haven't helped Satan. We're doing good when we have helped God, when we put effort into doing what He does. It's why we have stuff like this. If we just attended church, Sunday morning, Wednesday night, that'd be a very neutral, not really caring attitude. But when you take the time to say, hey, I want to have a Bible study with my brother, you're putting in effort, you're making sure God's will is done.
What are you guys?
Yeah, just a quick point. Hands have shed innocent blood. One of the things you can do to a person when you don't hear the full story is that you can murder someone's character. And murder someone's character can have a long-lasting effect. In fact, even if you were sincerely sorry for what you have done, it's difficult to go out there and tell everybody, I was wrong, I shouldn't have said those things, and I have murdered this person's character, because that can go so many different ways, so many different places, and that you really harm that person. And that's one thing you don't want to do, because once you've done it, it's difficult to take it back. It's like that ideal of getting on top of a roof and tearing open a down pillow and the feathers go all over the place. You may not be able to collect all those feathers again. And the same thing when you find a bad rumor about a person, that rumor can go all kinds of places, and you may not be able to really help that person in terms of restoring their character again. So that's something you just don't want to do, but you absolutely correcting the facts.
I'll go along with that. So I'm glad you brought that up. Another thing too, some things are intentionally spreading misinformation, sharing malicious gossip, subtly misrepresenting the truth, and as you said, character assassinations. Now I'm going to read something else. Here's something I've been thinking about, and I said, well, let me bring this up in class. This has been happening. We have to be very careful when we call someone racist or their actions racist, because we have no business getting in someone's heart. We try to overall, well, he had to do this because he's racist. How do we know his heart? We don't know why. Now, could he have done something wrong? Absolutely. But to get in and say his motives were this, we cannot do that. We do not sit in the place of God. I'm not saying anyone's doing that here, but we can't. We have to even correct people. No, it may look like that, but how do we know? If a policeman puts his foot on someone's head, no, I'm not saying that's the right way to do it. There was 1,000 better ways. But I cannot say he was racist for doing it. I can say it was wrong. I don't think that was the right move. He could have done something else. I can say that just looking at it. But I can't say he intentionally was racist when he did that. And I can't even go around telling someone I think he was racist for doing that, because that is a character assassination. That's what it's talking about, those things that are in our world today. Yes, they may not, there's could have been, again, 1,000 other ways. We may not like it. And even, and think about this as Christians, even if yesterday someone was racist in something they did, and they even said they were, can we next week say that they did the same thing as racist? It may have been, quote, a dumb thing to do. We may say that was stupid or something like that, or not the right way. I mean, I use those words. But can we say it's racist because we start getting into a person's motives and we don't sit in the place of God to do that. Now we can see if they said, yeah, I did that. If they confess, then we can only take their confession. They said they did. I mean, I had to go with them. They said they did it because it was racist, and they know why they did it. But can I put that on them when I don't know them? Chester.
That's the same thing. That's what the Democratic Party does.
Well, we can't get into politics because somebody's going to say, even the conservative, Republican, everybody has their own, each person has their own. And I'm not going to take sides on that one because I have my own viewpoints on that.
But you're a Tennessee fan.
Well, that makes us better than everyone else. I'm sorry, that's close. Brian Adams.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback off what Ray was saying and give a scripture to back him up when he said, Proverbs 18:21 says, death and life are in the power of the tongue. And then it says, and those who love it eat of its fruit. But you don't have to shoot someone, stab someone, etc. But you can speak death on someone. And it can be just as lasting as, them being in the grave from a character standpoint.
James talks about the tongue being a small fire, being able to set
James 3.
forth.
Absolutely.
Also, Exodus 20:16, we know that commandment, you shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. That's a prohibition from even way back when, and we had to be careful about assassination, I wouldn't say even, especially, let me use that word, especially among brethren. Let's call it what it is. Let's be truthful. There's some people we all don't get along with. We know that. We no need of hiding that. And I'm talking about in the brotherhood, wherever it may be. But we do need to handle their business and our relationship very delicately. Because what can happen is we can turn other people against another, and someone see it and wonder, okay, that person's a bad person. Well, that's just your relationship with that person. Was it one man's enemy is another man's friend? Even Adolf Hitler had friends. Jeffrey Dahmer had friends. Joseph Stalin had friends. Everybody had some friends somewhere along the line. They also had enemies. And as brethren, we had to be very careful.
Yes, sir. This concept we're discussing, the impact of giving false witness testimony. You may have heard of the Innocence Project, and there are other initiatives like it of trying to redeem or get convictions overturned.
Yes.
People who've been convicted, and literally scores of incidences come to light where through DNA evidence and then the eventual recanting of certain witnesses about people who were convicted for horrible crimes and served decades in prison, who, because the truth came out, were eventually freed. And the Innocence Project tried to, garner their freedom. We had a young man who spoke at a Rainbow Omega event. For those of you not familiar with Rainbow Omega, it's a charitable organization that supports families of special needs, kids and individuals, especially when the parents get, elderly and they need a place for the kids to be taken care of. The kids maybe in their 40s or 50s. And Avondale used to, support that in a strong way. And we could get into why, but and they used to have a banquet. And one year they had a gentleman named Dewey, and I forget his last name, speak there. and he was put in prison. And he refused, every time he came from probation, he refused to say he did the crime. But ultimately, after 28 years or whatever it was, he was released. And the lady who originally said he was the one who did it did recant her statement. And it's just a terrible thing. You're talking about potentially ruining someone's life, because if they're 19, 20 years old when they're sent to prison wrongly from this false witness, they're you know, a strong portion of their years have been taken away from them simply because of somebody's false statement. Emmett Till was killed, a little boy, because of false witness. I think recently the lady who said that he whistled or looked at her said, well, you know, I think I, you know, may have exaggerated that.
Yes, to make it worse.
But even still, whistling at somebody never converted to death. So I mean, that was a jacked up situation. That was racism, right? So that was, and we can, you know, definitively say that because of different evidences at the time that this black kid did this, and now he deserves to die because of what he did. He was a kid. You know, these are grown men. They have no self-control. They did exactly what those scriptures were saying. They threw caution to the wind, and they did an evil act. And so it manifests itself. Sin manifests itself in a lot of different ways, Jack. Sin manifests itself in the form of racism. Sin manifests itself in the form of arrogance. You know, but, you know, at the same time, we got to be able to just like, two things can be true at once. I like when Eric said that, because it doesn't always have to be either or. It could be, man, that's racist and that's sin. You know, man, that's you know, X, Y, and Z. So I'm not getting into the example you provided earlier, but just this idea of like, you know, we do have to be delicate with each other and give each other the benefit of the doubt in the body. You know, and I think that the world we live in provides so many. A lot of it does have to do with the media. The media is a very strong thing, right? It can sway people to do the right thing, it can sway people to do the wrong thing. It has its own narrative, and depending on what narrative you take, because everybody's taking different pictures of the same thing. You know, there's a narrative for everybody. You know, but the only one that should matter to us is the narrative of God.
Mm-hmm. And how God was that. I want to get Vincent again, right?
I was just going to say that you were bothered about speaking and saying things about people that's not true, or even it is true, the way to do it. But this thing about the digital format as far as email and text and Facebook and all these platforms, when you say something about somebody, especially if it's not true, even if it is true, it's really, really bad, and it just can tear their lives up all kinds of ways. And so before you send out, you need to really think about what you send to people, whether it's in the church or not in the church, or Christians getting on these formats and debating politics and what they think about one brother or the other brother and whatnot. That's just a terrible thing. And once it gets out into that arena, it can never be taken back.
Absolutely. Oh, just clearing the air, I sent something on RAM to Brian about we were just joking, you know, I don't want anyone to take that wrong. We were brother, we love each other, we've been together, we talk, you know, quite often. So just joking with him that we need to teach him how to cut up logs. And I'm sure he was looking from the land of Lincoln, he was like, well, where's the axe? You know, but
I'm glad you did that.
We're all
I was
good.
really concerned.
You know, we're all good on that. So, yes.
You said that was on them?
So, I'm not sure I totally agree with you on racism. If a person does something that's characterized that racists do, then yeah, they're racist. Let me give you an example. I know of a congregation up in North Georgia back in the 1960s. They had blacks in their congregation, and they turned those blacks out one Sunday. Said, you can no longer go here. You must go to a church building that they built around the corner. Now, that's racist. As racist as it comes. And believe me, I talked to members of both congregations. The black congregation said, yeah, they turned us out.
And they were some of the original members who were still there. And they are mad as heck about that. On the other hand, the other congregation, he said, yeah, we did it. And he said, other congregations have done it, which they are correct. And he said, we're not repenting. And those other congregations haven't repented. And so, yeah, you have to call them racist. And what's sad about the church is that many congregations up there know about this. And nobody does anything about it. I even talked to the preacher of the white congregation, and he told me, he said, Mr. Strickland, I have talked to my people over and over, and said they will not repent. And that is some of the things that the church has refused to deal with.
Well, with that, Ray, I'm not saying, and go back and remember what I said. If something is blatant and someone admits to being racist, that's one thing. But I'm saying we cannot put that label on someone's actions when we have no clue that's why they did it. A lot of things may look like that. You know, someone could easily see, let's say, a brother and sister having, lunch somewhere. Oh, he took her out on a date. Well, they may be talking about business. They may be talking about his wife, how they help. We can't put something out there that we don't have any idea that that's the truth. And I use that racist situation because of what has happened, what is happening, that someone would say a policeman did something, especially the police, because he was racist. It may not have been the right thing to do. I'm not justifying the wrongdoing, but to call it racist when we have no idea that's in their heart. A lot of people do some, like I said, could be considered at the end of the day some dumb things, but their motives weren't, evil, and we have to be careful of calling that racist and sinful when that's not what was even in their mind. Yes, Juan Millhouse.
My name's Juan Millhouse. One thing I want to talk about is, we talking about racism, that kind of stuff. When I was in school, I did some courses in sociology, psychology, anthropology, and one thing we need to distinguish is that there's a difference between racism and prejudice. Racism is an action. So if someone does something that hinders you, because of your race or because of, that's the racism part. But it doesn't mean that a person, that a person is prejudiced or not prejudiced, because we found that there's people who can be prejudiced and not racist, and then there's some who can be, both or none. So, in case where he was mentioning some of the churches, there was a time when, sometimes the law made you do things that you may not want to do. So you may have contributed to racism without even having a prejudiced heart. So it's kind of a difference in that. And that's one thing I took, I've taken that for a long time, that there is a difference between racism and prejudice, because racism is the action that can come from someone who is prejudiced or not prejudiced. So, some of these things you can say, yeah, that was racist because, it was an action that kept me from doing something that somebody else could do or that harmed me. So that's how I see the whole thing with racism and prejudice, that it's two separate things.
Well, when I was growing up, for a lot of us here, words have almost like meshed together. When I was coming through, you separated who was prejudiced and racist. Racist was almost never used growing up and, going to school in the 70s and 80s, or late 60s through the 80s. Just like we used to call someone just being picked on, not bullying. Bullying was something separate. That was really hard. When someone was bullied, you knew who the bullies were. Now, everything is bullied. But growing up, we never put it all under that umbrella. And so some of those words have changed. I want to get, the time's about up. Let me get this last one in. One who sows discord among the brethren. Proverbs 16:28, a perverse person stirs up conflict. Look at James 4:1, causes of fights and quarrels. We're to live at peace with one another. Will that mean we'll always agree 100%? No, and that's unrealistic.
but we're to live at peace with one another, considering one another. Jaden, you had your hand up.
Oh, I was gonna say, this is Jaden Jackson. I would say that all of these fall under discord, because if you commit discord, if you're trying to sow discord among brethren, you're doing all these things on purpose to make somebody feel bad, to do it to I don't remember exactly the exact definition of the word discord, but if I'm correct, it's sowing untrust and evil among people. You're tearing something apart, tearing relationships apart.
And that's why, one good thing, of course, that we have elders here. They keep a guard on that, especially among brethren here, because it can get out of hand. Anybody who's ever been in congregations where there's been men's meetings knows how that can go awry very quickly, because you have different thoughts and things that running through. And everyone has their own opinion, and it can get out of hand. And sometimes brethren in those situations could care less about feelings. Feelings go out the door. It's my way. Just Chester.
Has there ever happened where a whole congregation was, they used church discipline, the whole congregation?
Where the whole congregation was disciplined?
Yeah.
I don't know anything like that. Usually it's going to be like one person. I think there was a time, should it have been? Probably so. I say in earlier, 50s and 60s when people didn't show love for the brethren, didn't show love for the ethnic brethren. Yeah, there probably should have been because everybody participated. But there's probably some people in there who didn't say anything. That's another thing, we can't walk around with fear. When we see wrongdoing, we're going to have to address that. We don't have any other choice. I'll take one last question from Corey, and then
Well, the idea of, discord amongst the brethren, that's, the body's supposed to be our safe haven. We got to deal with a lot of mess out in the world, and that's it's honestly to be expected. But the body is supposed to be where we can feel safe with each other, where we can feel welcome, where we can feel love, and we can exhibit those same things towards others. So when that's compromised, or when that's impacted in a negative way, it's a really significant issue, because it shows that God's family is supposed to be a rock. But you start chiseling away at that rock, people fall off. I understand that part of it, but to come in and have discord, and what is that discord coming from? Is it coming from somebody's opinion? Because we shouldn't have discord about the word. But if it's coming from somebody's opinion, somebody's actions, then it becomes like a selfish thing. And it's not good to be selfish with your brethren. You're supposed to put your brethren above you. And so, there's a lot of rooted in that.
I appreciate all your comments, and for everyone, all the men coming, this is great. Like I said, it's been a 3-year drought. We wanted to bring at least a lesson here. One of the things we had, I was talking with Keith. For those who remember before, we used to have this class every quarter. We want to take an informal poll here. We're thinking about every other month, because there was lessons that we had that every quarter we kind of forgot. We always had to restart the engine all over again. But we don't know what that may, quarter may be too much. Every other month may be too much. I'm sorry, our quarter, okay. We want to get a general idea. Do you have any, Keith, you want to add it?
No, it was great.
Keith?
Every quarter seems to be too infrequent. We may forget what we were doing. We just have to restart it again. But every other month, it may be okay for us. Some of us may not work for everybody's schedule. We just want to just see what y'all think.
John and Jesse.
How often do the ladies come together? Yeah, so why can't we do it? Why can't we do it at least as much as they do?
Baby steps, brother.
We are, just
Man.
They don't have breakfast like we
We don't have to do
No.
it.
They do so.
Yeah, the ladies do, for those who don't know, ladies do. It's monthly, right?
Every other Saturday.
Yeah, I don't think everybody's hearing what is being said. Jeff?
Okay, ladies do it how often again? I have a lady that, she's like twice a month or once a month?
Once a month on
Zoom.
On Zoom.
On Zoom, once
So
a
they
month
do it
on Zoom.
virtually.
Virtually.
We can do it in person.
Yeah, I like eating food, so I don't know about y'all.
Every other month.
Well, every other month, what, Chester, you had something?
I hope we can do it every month. 'Cause
Every other month, I'm good.
We have every other month, someone says every month, what do you?
Every other month, fine.
Every other month?
Every other month is fine for me. I'm retired.
Every week is fine with me, I'm retired.
So every other
month.
every other month seems to be, okay. So the next one will be in December. So it's a good festive time for us to be together. We're going to end class. I would ask everyone, there's leftovers to take. Please help out those who prepared the food. Let's give them a round of applause again. Take what you can and let's help clean up, because we have to be out of here and get everything prepared. So Leonard.
One more comment.
Okay.
For you, Leonard, when you're praying, I reached out to Ahmed Fofana. He said he had to go to the ER this morning with minor chest pain. And he said he didn't want to take any chances coming to the breakfast, but he said he's doing good, praise to God. He said he's just waiting on results right now, so he asked him.
Amen.
Yes. Chester, you had something.
Also, Jason Williams said he's not feeling well. He wanted to be here. But he's having problems with his blood pressure. Please pray for him.
Okay. Okay. Well, Leonard, if you,
Jason Williams.
Leonard, if you give us a.
Let's bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we're so thankful for all the blessings that you give us and for the opportunity that we have to come before your throne and your children and ask you for favors and blessings. We're asking that as we dismiss, that you would accept our thanks for the food that was prepared and for those who were involved in its preparation. Thank you for those who are members of the body but that are ill and in need of your divine attention. We ask that you would bless Amma as he is asking the physicians to look at him and find out what his concerns are, as well as the second brother who is having problems with his blood pressure. Be with the physicians that are working with him, that they can get that under control. He can bring it down, and if necessary, take the medications and the treatments and lifestyle that will allow him to see improvement in his life. We thank you for all those that are here this morning. We ask you would bless those who wanted to come but were not able to, that they can return at the next men's breakfast. We are so thankful for this opportunity, having been away from it for the last couple of 3 years. We know that it was because of your blessing that we have all these things. I ask you to forgive us of our sins and bless us in the ways that you know that we need your divine attention. And hear this prayer that we offer in your Son Jesus' name. Amen.
Zach, phenomenal job in leading us. Thank you.
All right. Yes. All right.
I still need to get together, man. I'm about to get in trouble. I need you to save them. What you need, man? Let's go.
It may change stuff though. The path that we see, how the path is.
Help me out, man. Is this yours?
I just don't.
Next week. Yeah, Monday.
I was going to say, I didn't think they did it on Sundays.
There's probably some places that do.
Yeah.
What up, Chester?
Hello, Chester.
Hey, how you doing, brother?
Doing all right.
Enjoyed it.
Yes, very good, Chester. Hope you like the food.
I loved it.
Me too. Me too. Me too, Chester. So where is? Oh, I should know his name. Tell me. Your friend, the guy that that usually you come with.
He's at work today.
Okay. What his name?
Philip Miller.
Philip. I got to remember that name. Philip. Okay. All right. Well, let him know we missed him.
Yeah, I will.
Okay. All right.
And let everyone know that if somebody ever has to go out and get some more, please include me. Let me know. Let them know I'd like to ride with them.
Okay. All right. Now, Chester, I'm just looking. Do you need to sit down, or are you trying to connect up with somebody? Because I was going to help them dump stuff and so forth over here. Do you need to sit down?
Yeah, I was going to see some more people too. I was going to see Morrow.
You know what? He was sitting here, but hold on a second. Let me look. He may be gone. You know what? I don't see him.
And the other David. I know David Fleming is here, but I'm talking about the other David.
Now, which other David were you thinking about? So wait a minute. Here's Leonard's son, Leonard Morrow. He goes by the third. He's right there.
You want to see him too?
All right. Walk this way. It looks like he's busy. Chester was asking about your dad, and I thought both of you left. But when I saw you, I thought at least let if that's okay.
Yeah. What's going on, Chester?
How you feeling, having a blessed day. What about you, brother?
Absolutely, man. I'm feeling the same. Did you enjoy the breakfast?
I did.
Oh, there's Dad. I didn't.
There he is. He's around.
What's that now? Chester was looking for you, and
really?
When I first looked around, I didn't see either one of you, and then all of a sudden I saw your son, and then lo and behold, Dad shows up. So they're both here.
Yep. We were speaking earlier this morning, Chester. I was sitting next to you. Remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was sitting right next to you.
Yeah.
I'm fixing the plate for your roommate.
Okay.
That's what you want, right?
Yep.
How much further along are you today?
Yeah. What do you got planned for the rest of the day, Chester?
I'm going to have my dream come true today.
All right, I like that. I love that.
David Fleming's going to take me and ride in a race car. We're going to go fast. Because I've had dreams about going fast in a race car. I've been listening to the race on TV from NASCAR.
Yeah.
And I'm dreaming that I'm going around the track and riding with them. And I get to...
So you're gonna be racing, flying in the wind today. All right, that sounds like a blast. That's great. You know which racetrack?
I don't know where we're going. Okay. It's gonna be after we leave here.
Okay, nice.
I'm looking forward to that.
Oh yeah, man.
It's a dream come true.
I know it.
Because I